I could get by without these shutters. I could get by with a black roof, but I'm also making design choices about the colors and the composition of the build. And so I want to meet in the middle with that. I want to meet pieces that I have selected that I definitely want to have in the final build, but I also want to keep in mind, the stuff that does fade into the background, how can I minimize the cost of that?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Brick System Brothers. My name's Nathan Masters. Today I want to talk about market-conscious MOC design. So kind of a dense title, a lot of stuff packed in there. We'll break that down really quick right here at the beginning and then jump into the content. So market-conscious refers to keeping in mind which pieces are currently available, but not only what's currently available, also what is reasonably cheap and easier to get a hold of. Certain things are available, but they cost too much to be effectively something you would want to put out there that a lot of people could build. Now if you already have it in your collection and you're just building a MOC, that's fine, that's kind of a different thing. But today I'm talking about making a MOC that you want to put out on Rebrickable. You want to make instructions for this. You might even want to sell these instructions. And so it's important to have pieces in this creation that are accessible for a lot of the community. So market conscious, just looking at what's on the market right now, what are certain pieces costing, certain colors costing, and keeping that in mind as you build. And MOC, if you don't know what MOC is, it's an acronym. MOC stands for My Own Creation. It dates back to the early days of Lego building when people would start sharing stuff that they built online. Some people call it Lego Freestyle, even though that's kind of a theme from the 90s. But in any case, this refers to something that you build out of Lego that is not an official set, doesn't necessarily have instructions, you're just kind of free building. So the market-conscious MOC design, therefore, refers to designing something to share with the community, possibly with instructions for sale, keeping in mind pieces in this creation that are going to be easy to purchase, or at least won't break the bank as much as some other creations out on the market. Alright, let's check it out. Today's video actually gets started right here on my desk. I was laying out some projects. I actually wanted to build something with these old green shutters. And so the first thing I did was choose a window style and decide, alright, I'm going to build a little townhouse, maybe something a little bit more classic than modern, because we have these shutter pieces here. So I kind of have that locked in, and then since these are already green and I have quite a few, I want to lock in a color scheme. So I'm looking at 3 different colors to choose from here. I've got a sand green, dark green, and an olive green. And based on different prices and different availabilities of these out on the market right now, I would probably want to choose something that's going to be the cheapest for everyone. Let's just assume that out of these 3 colors I don't necessarily have a preference, even though if I build this model physically, I am probably going to build it out of sand green because that's what I have recently picked up from Pick-A-Brick walls. But let's just say out of these 3 color options I could go with either one for the model I'm going to put on Rebrickable and start there.
So the next thing I'm going to do with those options in mind is open up Studio and pull up a palette of the main brick sizes. These are kind of the standard bricks I'm going to be using if I'm building a structure or a house, and I just want to do a check and see how prices compare for these 3 colors in a selection of 6 basic bricks. So we're starting with our 1x1 and working up to 1x8. And the way that you can check prices is just click on the piece and then look down here at the bottom. It gives you some helpful information. So the center one here has the price, and it estimates it down to the 100th of a cent. Pretty sure this estimates for new pieces based on the last 6 months sales. So you can go onto Bricklink XP and check the price guide for the same piece, and hopefully this number would be somewhat close. Another thing you can do is check the last 6 months used sales. You might be able to get some of these pieces cheaper. But let's just make a direct comparison across the board for these 3 main colors. For sand green, a 1x1 is about 6 cents, olive green is about 9 cents, and dark green is about 8 cents. So nothing here is over 10 cents for 1x1. These are all pretty good prices, and we can safely use any 1x1 color in the structure. For 1x2, a sand green is 11 cents, Olive green is about 9 cents. Dark green is about 7. Okay, once again, pretty close to 10 cents a piece here, so nothing too extravagant. 1x2s we should be able to use in quantity just fine. 1x3, sand green is about 54 cents. It's kind of high. Olive green is about 20 cents, and dark green is $11.83. Okay, so right now this is telling me if I do choose dark green for the structure, I don't really want to use any 1x3 bricks if I can help it. I can probably get by with 1x2 and 1x1 to make this size brick if I absolutely need it, but I really don't want to be using an $11 piece, a $12 piece actually, in my build. So that doesn't necessarily disqualify dark green, but that is something to keep in mind for this 1x3 brick. Even with sand green a little bit, 54 cents, kind of high for a brick, but not quite as bad as the dark green. Okay, let's move along to 1x4. About 21 cents for sand green, about 11 cents for olive green, and about 17 cents for dark green. Reasonable prices here for the 1x4 brick size. For 1x6, we have 34 cents for sand green, 16 cents for olive green, $8.22 for dark green. Alright, this might be a deal breaker for our dark green color. We've got two basic brick sizes now that we'll probably be relying on pretty heavily in the structure that are kind of prohibitive cost-wise. So dark green is really starting to look like not much of a player for the options to consider here. Sand green, olive green are still pretty much neck and neck in the running, and could go either way at this point. Let's check our 1x8s. Sand green 1x8 is $4.44. Olive green 1x8, 17 cents. Dark green 1x8 doesn't have a price. And actually, come over here and look in the bottom right corner. You see that little yellow exclamation point? That means there's no known inventory of a Lego set that has released a dark green 1x8 brick. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's a pretty good indicator there's not going to be anything out there to even buy if you want to use a brick in this size. Okay, so at this point, I think we can safely disqualify dark green from the running and just narrow it down to the sand green and the olive green. Now, like I said, personally, I have a lot of sand green in my current collection from pick-a-brick walls, actually. I was able to pick up 1x6s, 1x4s, and 1x1s in quantity from the Lego store directly. Pretty good prices there. So that's what I'm going to be using if I build this model myself. But that doesn't mean I can't build it in olive green for the rebrickable one. In fact, I have started building a structure in sand green. Personally, I think it looks better with the plain green shutter color. But even at this point, it wouldn't be too hard to switch everything over to olive green if someone decided they wanted to make that as well. And so it's kind of a personal preference when you get to this point. Both of these colors have reasonable prices. Really the only thing sticking out at this point is the 1x3 sand green brick. That's over 50 cents. And so far in the model, I don't think I've actually used any in the structure. One way we can check that here is the select tool, type and color. I'm just going to click on this 1x3 sand green and see how many we have selected. It's just the one. So see, if I click on the 1x2, 130 parts selected. I've used quite a few 1x2s throughout the model, but 1x3s, nothing. So far I've been able to get by without using the 1x3 brick, and just trying to help cut some of the costs involved with pieces that are more expensive, and instead replacing those with combinations of other bricks that will work. 1x4s, I've used a few, but not too many. In general, the 1x2, if we can use two of these side by side everywhere a 1x4 could be used, you can save a little bit of money if you do that. 1x6s, quite a few of those as well. It actually shows you the selected price of all the 1x6s in the house so far. Olive greens, since I don't have those, it won't show anything. So there are a lot of helpful tools in the Studio platform to help you figure this out. So that's just a rundown of basic brick sizes and how you can kind of optimize even a structure as complex as a house. You start to look at how you can optimize that based on price information you can shave off a few dollars by the end of it, possibly even shaving off $10 by excluding as many 1x3s as possible and breaking the 1x4s where possible into 1x2s side by side. So built up the house with the bricks, and then once I got up to the roof section, I'm going to do the same thing. I've laid out a few copies of various roof structure sizes. I did decide to go with the light bluish gray, so I've kind of locked in the color already, but I can still look at how the different prices compare when making decisions about how to fill these in. So a 1x2 45-degree slope, 4 cents, pretty cheap. The 2x2 about 5 cents. The 2x3 is about 15 cents. 2x4 is about 11 cents. And 2x8 is 40 cents. So right away you can see if there's an opportunity to replace a 2x8 run with 2 of these, we can save about 18 cents, I think. So that'd be 22, and that would be 40 when you have them lined up side by side. So up along the side right here, you can see instead of using 2x8s for this run right here, I've just split that into 2x4 roof slopes, and every time I do that, I'm shaving off that difference between the use of those. Same thing with the 2x3. Where possible, I'm going to combine a 1x2 and a 2x2 just to replace the use of the 2x3 here and save a little bit of money. There are a couple places where I'm still going to need it, like right here, just structurally decided I'm going to need a 2x3 here. Yeah, so that's just an introduction about how you can use Studio to compare prices and then moving forward making decisions about the structure. I would suggest doing this before you start building and just let it guide your build all the way through. It might be harder if you've already got something built up and then you want to come back in and check different things. You'd have to probably do some surgery on the model. So I like to do it beforehand and then use that to guide my building preference as I continue. I did want to talk about the house a little bit. I've actually named this Carter Trallis. Just, you know, back in the day people named houses, so why not? And using these green shutters, that's kind of where it all started. But I'm also developing this build completely in Studio. So this is a little bit of a departure from how I usually like to build. For the most part, if I'm going to be adding a MOC to Rebrickable or putting it out there for the community, I really prefer to build it physically first and then use my physical model to guide the digital build. And in doing that, I can actually separate things into different steps right away. I've reversed the process here a little bit, mostly because I have enough of these shutters, but these shutters will only connect with a certain type of window frame, and this is the piece I don't really have enough of. I'm probably also short on the light bluish gray roof slopes, but everything else here I probably have on hand until you get up to these other white shutters. And I'll have to probably buy some of these pieces on Bricklink, which is not a big deal. I'd like to build this house eventually, especially since I have all these sand green bricks already on hand. I think it'd be kind of cool. But to have something going up and in development, I decided to just go ahead and start building this in Studio, get a feel for how big it was going to be, and then I can have a complete model and know which pieces I would need to buy all at the same time and just make a few Bricklink orders instead of trying to fill that piece by piece at a time. Alright, so that is looking at the prices with the bricks, like I said, and a little background on this house. I'm not going to go into too many details about bottom to top building in Studio. One thing I am doing with this model, there's a layer of tiles here, so this will be able to separate. In fact, I'm keeping this whole right section of the upper story separate from the left section so that you can open this up. You won't be able to take the gray roof off of this white floor, so I'm going to have it split into 2 sections to access the upper floors, and then both of those sections can also lift off to access the lower floor right here. And you can see I have this layer of white tiles that's going to help keep things from sticking down too hard. I've even added a separation wall. So all this stuff, probably a topic for another video if you guys are interested in bottom to top studio building, which is what I have been doing more and more recently. Like I said, usually I have the physical model as a reference and then I'm putting that into studio, but this one a little bit different. I did the same thing with a barn MOC a while back, so that went up on the channel last year. This time going a little bit more complicated, hopefully something that people will be able to buy pieces for without spending a fortune. And if you want to check on things throughout the build process and kind of keep an eye on how prices are going, you can also do that with the model tool. You go to model info and you can look at the total price to date. I've just passed $100 and I'm sitting at about 750 pieces. So that average is above 10 cents a piece. We can look at some of the pieces that are really doing us in here. Okay, the 1x8 I have set out for the example is a $5 piece, so that will be going away. The stairs in dark orange was just an aesthetic option. That's a $2 piece. This 1x2 roof peak is over $1. So some of these pieces that I am kind of making a compromise on just for the overall feel of the build, yeah, it's going to have to be a happy medium somewhere between the cheapest pieces available for what you can do with them, and also keeping, you know, the look of the build sharp and what do I want the finished product to look like. Because I could get by without these shutters. I could get by with a black roof, but I'm also making design choices about the colors and the composition of the build. And so I want to meet in the middle with that. I want to meet pieces that I have selected that I definitely want to have in the final build, but I also want to keep in mind, you know, the stuff that does fade into the background, how can I minimize the cost of that while also keeping it structurally stable and a good building experience. Like I want this to be similar to if you were building a modular, kind of the comparison that you would make there on the structural side. And the last thing I want to talk about is part variance, which can be difficult in studio. So let's get an example here. At first glance, these 1x2 bricks look pretty much identical. So as you're, you know, pulling pieces into the work area, building this building up, you might accidentally grab a bunch of these. So this is a 1x2 brick, but what's different about this is the bottom is open. Now Studio gives you this option because this was an actual Lego piece, but it's kind of dated. Now in this case, it was never available in sand green, so you're not going to have much of an issue. If we change this color over to red, we're going to see that it's a 14-cent piece, 13.9. And now if we make a comparison with a regular one in red, this is a 3-cent piece. So huge cost difference there. Externally it looks almost identical until you look at the bottom and you see, oh yeah, this is the tubeless version. It's going to be way more expensive if it's even available in that color. Another one that can be tricky is when you have pieces that are actually available in both copies. So let's look at this little 1x2 thing right here. Actually, let's look at the peak with the point on it. This was a Hutap piece a while back. Okay, so out of these 3 different variations, we can see that there's a few different things. We have the oldest one has kind of this cut tube. The central one has just an open slot, and then the current one has these stud holders is what they're called. So that's where the variation comes in for these 3 pieces. The oldest one actually isn't available in light bluish gray, so we'll get rid of that. But these 2 are, and we'll just make a price comparison. This one is 11 cents, and this one is 10 cents. Okay, so that's not actually too far off. I often run into cases where both pieces are available in your color choice, but there's a huge cost difference, and that will definitely add up over time if you're putting multiple copies in. So it doesn't always bite you, but it's something you want to be aware of, especially for pieces that have multiple variants that do the same thing. Visually very similar pieces, but there might be that one little mold difference setting them apart.
So today, really working with the assumption that you want to build Lego as cheaply as possible, and not necessarily cheaping out on your design choices, but finding that balance of I want to use these pieces, I want to use this color, but I don't want extra expense involved with this model. So that's kind of the assumption I'm working with. Some people are able to just buy at their heart's content, which is great. If that's you, go for that. But looking at putting something unrebrickable where there's a market, a lot of people not able to do that, and really looking at how to cut those costs down. If you can do that as a designer, I think that's doing a favor to the community. So that's something that I have started to appreciate now that I've been putting MOCs unrebrickable. Really able to use these websites that track prices. This is incredible. Kind of the data set that's available in Bricklink. 6-month average, there's enough volume and traffic of who buys pieces and how much they're going for to really zero in on where individual Lego pieces are at in the market, which I think is really cool. And I want people to be able to use that information in their builds, in their projects, to save money for people that are looking to do that. I'm one of those people. You probably are one of those people. And if you'd like to build Carter Trallis, I want you to know that that's something I did when I was in the design process. So more to this house coming up on the channel. Like I said, I do want to build this with physical pieces eventually, but probably before that happens, it will be available unrebrickable as a model that you can build yourself. I'll have the parts list in there. You'll be able to see, hey, he didn't use any of those $4 1x8 sand green bricks. So wanted to dive into this topic a little bit more than just the surface level treatment I've mentioned before in other videos. Hopefully you guys found it interesting. Drop some comments down below and I will get back to you with any questions. Check out the other stuff on our channel, guys. If this was helpful for you, we'd appreciate the subscription. But until then, we'll see you next time on Brick System Brothers.